Chapter 17. Kidnapped in Gaza waters. Vittorio Arrigoni. December 6, 2008. I tried to ask the highest ranking Israeli officer whether they were planning to kill me. I could see more than 10 pistols, guns, and cannon barrels pointing at me, following my every move. Before the Israeli soldiers boarded the fishing boat, I asked him, and the other soldiers, what kind of obsessive fear Israel nurtured, that a bunch of simple Palestinian fishermen within their own sea zone, trying to catch just enough fish to feed their families, could incite such a reaction. The Israeli officer, so iron-willed and authoritarian when barking orders in Hebrew at his soldiers and in English, with a distinctly Australian accent, at me, had nothing to say in reply to my simple query. These soldiers, all muscles and stony coldness, are trained to kill a man in less than a second, or less when he's Palestinian, without even batting an eyelid. But it's obvious they are unable to willingly grasp the meaning of simple terms such as right to exist, and right of sustenance. Since we were far from Israeli borders, I told the Israeli officer I didn't recognize his authority or his right to kidnap me and my friends, the fishermen. I, therefore, decided I would present passive resistance. I climbed onto the cabin roof, and then onto the iron structure, used as a jib, to lift the fishing nets, at the boat's stern. 3 soldiers followed me, pointing guns in my face. Their eyes behind the black balaclavas seemed to me like the best representation of hatred that I had ever seen, a hatred taught in years of lessons learned by heart on how to best defeat an enemy, even when that enemy doesn't exist. Not in the least bit intimidated, I asked them whether they intended to kill me, and if so, to go ahead and finish off their job then and there. Go ahead and kill a civilian, a disarmed Italian on a Palestinian fishing boat, fishing with his Palestinian friends in Palestinian waters. A 4th soldier came forward, and I recognized the weapon he was holding, a taser gun. I told him the truth, that I have a heart condition. His weapon could have given me a cardiac arrest. The soldier got closer, the officer gave him the order, and I turned my back on both of them, so as not to feel too much compassion for them. The soldier shot me in the back, an electric shock that knocked me right out. Then all 4 soldiers tried to push me down the 3-meter leap, down onto the stern steel floor that could have caused several broken bones. I lunged forward and leapt into the sea, swimming slowly with what strength I had left. I swam toward the shore on the horizon, toward Gaza, toward my home. Indifferent to the intimidating bullets hitting the water a few centimeters from my head, I swam for a good half hour, followed at a short distance by the 8 warships. But when my teeth started to chatter uncontrollably, and the palms of my hands turned blue, I had to give in, and let the soldiers pull me out of the water, beating me up as they did so. I narrowly missed getting hypothermia. When we got to the port of Ashkelon, Darlene, Andrew, and I were marched out of the Israeli warship, and were met by a scenario reminiscent of the Holocaust. It was something that reminded me of Schindler's List, or the horror-imbued prose of Primo Levi. All the fishermen were made to kneel, stark naked, chained at the ankles, and handcuffed with their arms behind their backs, and blindfolded. These were the conditions they had been made to travel in, on an open deck for 50 nautical kilometers. Why? For what reason on earth does Israel, through its army and government, soil its reputation with such crimes against the civilians of Gaza on a daily basis? Why does it impose these collective punishments? Preventing harmless fishermen from catching fish a few miles from the coast, in their own water zone, and more generally starving Gaza's population held captive in its siege, certainly doesn't favor the peace process, nor will it give Israel more security. The exact opposite is true. We 3 internationals were led into a prison at Ben Gurion, followed by another one in Ramall, where we immediately went on a hunger strike to ask for the immediate release of the Palestinian fishermen, which eventually took place. I was held for 6 days in that Israeli jail in terrible conditions, in filthy and claustrophobic cells, crawling with insects and parasites that feasted on my skin. But coming from Gaza, I was used to being held under chains. Through Israel's will, Gaza is the biggest open-air prison in the world. All the industries have had to close down. Over 80% of the population survives under the poverty line, and the highest rates of unemployment in the world are recorded in Gaza, where there's no electricity or fuel. Hospitals need medicine, and the vast majority of the population needs food and the bare essentials. The Israelis only hauled me from one open-air prison to an enclosed prison, where at least, unlike in Gaza, they regularly serve rations, and both electricity and drinking water are available almost daily. But I was denied the most basic of human rights, such as the right to contact my attorney or consulate. Furthermore, I'm keen to speak out against the prison of Ramel, 20 kilometers from Tel Aviv, where hundreds of African refugees, mostly Ethiopian, Eritrean, and Sudanese, are virtually buried alive. They have perfectly valid UN visa passes. In any civilized country they would have been assigned accommodation and the bare essentials to survive. They are fleeing from war, they are no terrorists. But once again, when it comes to human rights and more generally to international law, Israel has demonstrated that they speak just a bunch of hollow words outside their borders, as well as within them. I'll do everything in my power to let the inhuman conditions of my inmates be known. I promised them I would. In the end, Andrew, Darlene, and I were deported. We didn't appeal to an Israeli court so as not to legitimize our arrest, which is considered a kidnapping under international law. Our lawyers will battle it out to have the fishing boats returned. Besides the financial loss suffered by the boats' owners, what's really aggravating us is the thought of 50 unemployed fishermen and about 30 Palestinian families without a means of sustenance for the last week. Those boats stolen by Israel are a symbol of the siege under which Gaza is forcibly held, the illegality bordering on terrorism with which the Israeli army operates outside its territory. Personally, I, Vittorio Arrigoni, declare that I'm a lion. The more I get flogged, the more they jail me, the steelier my will to fight for human rights becomes. It was no laughing matter for Gandhi and his companions to shake off the British occupation, nor for Mandela to defeat the apartheid that reigned supreme in South Africa. Neither the wounds inflicted on me in these months in Gaza, nor has my last confinement sufficed to make me take a single step back on the path toward the non-violent civic struggle I undertook. It's a moral matter that spells freedom for the Palestinians, and simultaneously peace and security for the Israelis. Stay human. Vittorio Arrigoni, Islam and Free Gaza Activist. By David K. Schermerhorn. April 19, 2009. There is an historical connection between the Gazan community and offshore fishery. In recent times, some 3,000 fishermen in over 700 boats made their livelihood in the waters off the shores of Gaza. Before 1978, when the fishing area included the sea off the Sinai coastline, the area covered some 75,000 square kilometers. The larger boats are about 20 meters in length and usually carry a crew of 7. They are typically trawlers using downriggers to lower their nets to the ocean bed. Currently their main catch is bream or sardines that average between 8 and 14 inches. Smaller craft, hassocks, normally deploy their nets a few hundred meters offshore. The nets are then hauled in by hand. These catches are very modest. Chapter 18. Stealing Gaza's gas. On